What's up, everybody? Welcome to Just a Little Salt, the podcast hosted by me, the Salty Paramedic. If you or anybody you know wants to be on the show, make sure to send a request to justalittlesaltpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to support the podcast and the work I'm doing for first responders, it's easy. Go on the saltyparamedic.com. Everything there, books, merch, resources, is built around this community. If you're looking for bonus episodes or content you're not going to hear anywhere else, make sure to join the Patreon. Go on patreon.com and search the Salty Paramedic. That support directly helps me keep bringing this content to life. Without further ado, thanks for listening. Here's the show. What's up, everybody? We got a brand new episode of Just a Little Salt. It's been a while. I've been fairly busy. I just want to update you all real quick before we get going about some news going on in my life while I've been kind of away from this podcast platform. If y'all didn't know, I was featured on a TV show recently. I went on a cooking competition. It's on HBO Max and Food Network. It's called 100 Cooks. So please go check that out. That was a great experience, cool experience. You know, I used to cook in restaurants before I did this whole social media thing and firefighting and all that. So that was really cool experience. So go check out that TV show. I've been around the country doing speaking engagements on first responder mental health. That's been really important to me, getting to go meet people from around the country. Next year I'll be in Canada, so I can say it's worldwide now, I guess. I've been doing that. I'm locked up this year, so if your department's interested in having me come speak at a conference, expo, whatever, for 2027, please reach out to me. A couple new things on the website. I've got trading cards now up called Frequent Flyers, just funny little things to check out. And then a card game called Limp Hoses. It's a party game. Also, I've got my kids book, children's book. It's called Felix Wants to Be a Firefighter. It's about a wolf, and it will teach your kids about what being a firefighter is all about, the jobs and duties and everything. So you can pre-order that children's book as well as the Felix the Wolf Stuffed Animal on shop.thesaltyparamedic.com. Enough about me. We're going to talk about these two guys. I'm very, very excited to have them on the podcast. Real quick shout out to Delaware County, Ohio EMS. They've helped these guys out a lot. They're going to give me a little synopsis of their life, and then we're going to dive right into the questions. This episode is going to center around pediatric CPAP. So, guys, whoever wants to go first.
Rob, go ahead.
My name is Rob Glaze. I've been a paramedic for almost 34 years. Started out at Delaware County EMS, went to Westerville Fire in Central Ohio, retired there, and went back to Delaware County EMS where I started. Just live outside of Columbus. I have a wonderful wife and a beautiful daughter, and I'm retired, but not.
Yeah, I'm Kyle Goodknight. About 3 decades in healthcare and as a whole. I spent the first 10, 12 years as a respiratory therapist only. And then I got the EMS bug by this guy bringing people into our hospital all the time and firing me up to become a paramedic, and a couple others that came in. So I ended up becoming a paramedic, and then ended up getting a private ambulance job, my first go at it. And I really liked the 24/48s that they were running. I'm not a big fan of 12 hours anymore, 12, 3 days in a row and all that stuff. So I jumped ship on respiratory. I did go into medical sales for 10 years and brought almost all of Ohio, the EasyIO, and trained them and implemented the EasyIO, and one of the original CPAP devices that was ever on the market that was disposable, called the Goodknight. Of course, I don't represent them anymore, but if anybody remembers that first disposable, I helped bring that into the market too. So, but now I'm one of our shift clinical educators for Delaware County EMS, and that's about it. I've got a wife and 2 kids. My daughter, who you'll hear a little bit about later on in this conversation, she's at Ohio State as a nursing student. So, and then my son's in media productions, and actually he's in Cincinnati this weekend doing paintball media production. So and my wife's also a pediatric nurse. If she listens to it, she'd be like, why didn't you tell me I was a pediatric nurse? So a very strong medical background family. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, how did you two first meet?
Well, we went to high school together. Okay. Don't answer like you answered on there, Rob. No.
Yeah, we kind of, I wouldn't say part ways. It's just, he went on to his career and he was down in Charlotte for a while. And then we kind of reconnected when he was back as a respiratory therapist at St. Anne's in Westerville, Ohio. And I was bringing patients in, like he said, and we've that was probably what 2003, 2004.
So yeah. Yeah,
we've been like brothers ever since.
Yeah. I mean, we did go to high school together. We knew each other there, but he invited me to a race. Rubbin's racing. Ain't first, your last, Ricky. So, and that kind of like really solidified our friendship, and been connected at the hip privately and professionally now. So.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, your history with being a respiratory therapist and then a paramedic, was there any change in how you approached patients? Going from those two positions specifically?
I really had to make sure that I focused on the whole patient and not just the airway. That was that is a big issue with me, or was. I would just gravitate to the head all the time, and that may not be my position that day. So I had to really remember that I have to not just focus on the airway like I did for 10 years. And I still stayed a respiratory therapist. Heck, I did both jobs simultaneously for many, many years. I'd leave. I actually worked on patients that I would bring into the hospital. The next day I'd have them in the ICU. So, it was pretty surreal when it came to that. But yeah, that was probably my biggest thing that I had to consciously think about is like, just don't go to the head. I had to, focus on everything. Of course, airways first always, but it's just one of those things where if it was someone else's airway day, I had to make sure I didn't overstep their ability to do their job. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. These next two questions might go hand in hand, so I'll talk about them both just in case. So this can be for both of you all. At what point did pediatric CPAP become a personal mission instead of just another treatment? And then was there one specific pediatric patient that changed everything for you?
I'm going to defer this one to Kyle.
So back in 2012, my kids had a run of croup in the house, and my son got it first. He was treated in the ER, let go. My daughter got it the 3 or 4 days later, and not so much on that one. She ended up having diarrhea and vomiting too the night before, and then mom went to a brand new job as a pediatric nurse at a physician's office, so she couldn't stay home with the baby, my daughter. So I did, and then when I turned on the lights at around noon to wake her up, because she had been up all night, I was like, oh, she was as pale as my shirt, and I was like, oh, so I scooped her up, put her in the car. Therapist, paramedic, I didn't think like I should call, it wasn't one of those things where this is going to reflect on the mental health later on, because I beat myself up on not, thinking how serious it was and how serious it got. But we went down to an urgent care. Nurse saw me right away and grabbed my daughter out of my hands, yelled at me, and like, why did you call the squad? And I'm like, I didn't know she was this bad. And then nonetheless, she ended up going down to our main Nationwide Children's Hospital downtown, about 25 minutes away in midday traffic, and it just my wife went with her, and then I met them at the ER. We went into a regular hospital bed, and the doctor came in to assess my daughter, unlocked the bed, and pulled her out himself and started pushing her down the hallway and taking her to the trauma bay, recruiting nurses and help. And he's like, Mom and Dad, give me the last 12 hours of what happened. And so we started firing at him. And then she's now in the trauma bay. She's got everything hooked up. Of course, she's on her first racemic epinephrine. They get a pressure of 40 over very little. And starting her second racemic epinephrine, the doctor was like, you know what, we're just going to tube her. And I looked at my wife, and she looked at me with this desperate look, and I just spoke up. I said, hey, can we try BiPAP? We're going to find out in 4 minutes if it stabilizes her breathing. And doctor looked at me and said, yeah, that's a great idea. Get it started. By the way, what do you do? And he saw my wife in scrubs, so he assumed that she was in healthcare. But I was like, I'm a respiratory therapist and a paramedic, and she's a pediatric nurse. And he's like, oh, so you're one of us? And I said, yeah. And he's like, come here, let me show you everything. So he ended up pulling up all the labs and showing us how sick she really was. And she ended up being septic. She was in septic shock. And that's why her pressure was so low. She was everything except for organ failure so far. And the BiPAP stabilized her blood pressure. We can get into that a little bit later too, why that it's not the same contraindication it is for an adult having low blood pressure. It actually stabilizes a child with positive pressure. But yeah, we went up to the ICU later on that day. Rob came to visit because my daughter's kind of he's kind of a godfather to my daughter. We're standing over her, looking down at her on the BiPAP machine. And he asked one question. He's like, why aren't we doing this in EMS? And I said, well, our protocols only go down to 12 at best, maybe 16. And we don't have this cool mask. The mask is a total face mask. It's not here. It's over the whole face like an SCBA. And then fast forward a few years, Rob had another training on sepsis. Remembered Camden's story. Started talking with the same hospital that she went to, and next thing you know, I'm behind the scenes helping Rob plug the parts and pieces together. But as you know, because as respiratory, that there's all types of parts and pieces in a hospital that you can make things work. So we had to adopt a hospital-sized mask and connections to the EMS world. And Rob and his team at Westerville and the medical director, Frank Orth, unfortunately he's passed, but he was instrumental of getting this started with the protocol, and because there was no protocols, and Rob can talk about the process on that. But that's the pediatric story that brought this all to fruition. And then we've grown it from there with many, many other people helping since then. So,
Yeah.
So we implemented it in July of 2019 at Westerville, and with great success. And now it's all over Central Ohio. Over 40 plus cases with really great outcomes. So it's exciting. And we couldn't have done it without Children's Hospital and all the doctors involved to help us do it, because it was just unheard of in the field. We've treated adults since early 2000, and it's the same exact concept. It's just little kids with a full face mask.
Yeah. And you all know too well, unfortunately, a lot of changes in EMS firefighting come from tragedy or a traumatic event to jumpstart that. So with that being said, why do you think so many EMS systems have ignored pediatric CPAP for so long?
I wouldn't say they've ignored it. I just don't think they have the story that we did, and they just see the cases they've had for years. And we can talk about that later too, but they try nebulizers and blow by and all that stuff that it makes them feel better, like they're doing something, but it's actually doesn't do anything. I think it's the equipment. I think it's just the not knowing, and it's training. Like once we start training, and we can touch on that later too, of changing the mindset. This is so easy, and people just, once they see how easy it is, it should be on every truck. And
right. Mm-hmm. Well, and two, I get this all the time because people for years have there's basically three things that we have to debunk every time we train. One is that kid's never going to tolerate that mask. Well, sorry, when they're so distressed, they will. And if they're too little, it's a strap and flow concept, right? They just, you got what one person in one of the classes said, you got to hurt them to help them. So, I'm like, I don't want to hurt these kids, but if it's an uncomfortable mask and they're little, it's, our medical director that's helping us with this, Dr. Chelsea Kadish out of Children's, she's our pediatric medical director consult. And she says, you know what, we just do a strap and flow concept. And, we, with these smaller kids that we can't talk to and coach them through it, if they even need coaching, because sometimes kids feel it and go, oh, this is help. The second thing to debunk is that the pressure is going to hurt them, that, oh, PEEP is going to hurt that child. Well, hold on a minute. As a respiratory therapist working in the hospital in the NICU before, we put brand new babies on nasal pillow CPAP. I talked to a NICU nurse, and I said, what's the lowest PEEP you've ever put on a kid? Is it like 1? And they're like, no, 4. Most of the time it's 5 or higher. So PEEP is PEEP, whether you're applying that to a 500-gram patient or a 500-pound patient. PEEP is PEEP. It just stints the airways open. It's not barotrauma per se. So that was the third debunk is really the protocol and the fact that people don't realize that work of breathing is the number one vital sign when we want to put these kids on it. Like they don't realize that saturations are late signs of something going bad.
Yeah, so, and we can throw in there too, is like a lot of people, it's too aggressive. It's too aggressive. It's not aggressive. That's why it's called non-invasive ventilation. And it's just not knowing, and it's education and training. And
we got to walk them down a path. Well, you know what I mean?
We've learned a lot since 2019, especially working with Children's, of no longer need to sedate these kids, because if they need sedated, they probably don't need CPAP once they see that it's working. But again, the strap and flow, and I think once guys really dive into this and see all the information we have that we can show later, it's super simple, and we're debunking every reason why you should not be doing it.
I mean, we've even had medical directors say, wow, that's, they're not, and we've had to walk the medical directors down the path of this discussion. And why, if you saw an adult with grunting or belly breathing or retractions, what would you think? Everybody says, oh, I put them on CPAP, or I would be thinking it. So we just have to switch the brain from what they know to what they don't know and make them comfortable with it. And that's the biggest thing, the comfort level. And really right now, as as you and I and Rob know from going through these last few conferences that we've seen, there is a huge emphasis on stabilizing on scene for a lot of things, blood, CPR, ROSC. This is no different. We can stabilize these respiratory distress pediatric patients now on scene, get them into somewhat of a starting control and stabilization and supporting their breathing, and then get them to the hospital. No longer diesel fuel and blow by. That's not the answer anymore. It's this.
Yeah, we always talk in our industry, do no harm, and we're actually finding we're doing more harm by not treating kids in the field and stabilizing them. And by getting them on CPAP right away and address that work of breathing, we can figure out what's going on with them later. Just fix the work of breathing. And then it just gives you some time to really figure out what's going on. And if they need a fluid bolus, if they need treatments, I mean, the list goes on. So again, education.
Yeah, I agree with y'all completely about the just the uncomfortability of pediatric calls, because in my experience in EMS, I've seen some of the strongest medics just completely, break down, freak out on bad pediatric runs. And, I have too at some points. I remember when I first went through paramedic clinicals, the majority of my intubations I got was on small children for pediatric dental surgeries. And I was scared to death to intubate those kids. This is the first time I intubated somebody, my hands were shaking. It's just a whole nother component to it. So with that being said, why do you think pediatric respiratory calls are some of the most stressful calls that we run?
Nobody ever had an answer. Yeah.
Low frequency. Yeah, great. Usually when they call us, it's high acuity, and we don't see enough of them as an industry. I would say that's probably the number one reason.
And I mean, a real close second is that people don't realize that, they don't really have anything for that respiratory distress patient. They just don't. They have blow-by, which has been debunked in multiple studies that show that blow-by is not efficient, to the point where they've even measured FiO2 next to the mouth of the patient, and it's almost room air. So it's like, and then God forbid you'd want to nebulize with blow-by and you're just exchanging upper airway. So we nebulize with the CPAP. Actually, our protocol says strongly suggest asthmatic patients that are pediatric get CPAP with their nebulizer, because we can stent those atelectatic lungs open. A lot of kids have a lot of atelectasis, so it's one of those things where that PEEP will help stent that open. We're not talking about massive amounts of PEEP either. Start them on 5, So.
Now, I think y'all answered this question earlier, but there might be another mistake as well. But what's the biggest mistake providers make when assessing a child in respiratory distress? I know you talked about paying attention to the SpO2. Is there anything else?
I don't think they focus on the work of breathing. I don't think they recognize it like they should. They don't pull their shirts up and look at the retractions, and they do go off the SpO2 and, it's great. Well, as we know, that's a late vital sign, and good luck getting an end tidal on a child. So you just got to really look and see how they're presenting.
Are there any other early warning signs that should make medics think, hey, this kid's getting into trouble?
I mean, it really boils down to the work of breathing. Here, we've got a few cases that we've heard about from our own department and others that they've shared with it, that Dr. Kadish has shared with us. If one incident the patient was already on the back end of the work of breathing. They were lethargic and not completely like awake and showing huge retractions, but they were still having tachypnea. So so you've got to realize where you're at in the chain of their process of work of breathing and failure. So it's one of those things where of course, if they're blue at all, you know what I mean? Okay, let's, if they're any type of cyanosis, you can, their reaction, like they should, especially little kids, they're probably not going to really want to, know a stranger. So if they're not crying and they should be, that kind of thing. So it's not really there's not really anything pre-work of breathing that I've noticed. Rob, how about you? Like pre-work of breathing that would get us to thinking that we need to start this kid on CPAP, unless like I said, they may already be on the backside of that increased work of breathing.
Well, I mean, you can see, I've seen kids with just their cyanotic and their tripoding. I mean, just things like that. Yeah. And you hit
silent chest. That's another thing,
acting, especially age appropriate. Like if they're not acting right, they're obviously in distress.
Yeah.
And, and it goes back to like the adult CPAP. It works pretty fast. If it doesn't work very fast, then we're behind the 8 ball. Then we got to look at other stuff, unfortunately, intubation and things like that. But what we're seeing and what I've witnessed, they bounce back so fast. Even those kids that don't look like they're doing good is, again, like adults, we're told a lot of stuff of all the contraindications. Kids, there's pretty much not, other than airway obstruction, facial trauma, or if the mask doesn't fit, apnea, obviously. But it's just crazy. Like you put it on and try it and you'll be surprised. Most of the time you'll be surprised that it works. And that's the difference between the adult and pediatric.
From the cases you all seen where this has been utilized, which diagnoses in particular benefit the most from utilizing this?
I would say asthma. We asked our medical director that works with us. She's part of our team on this whole process and this whole project. And I asked her, I said, "Hey, what's the number one reason you're putting kids on CPAP or BiPAP in the hospital setting?" And she said asthma. And once again, we're going to be saying CPAP and BiPAP non-invasive. All three are the same thing for the most part. We know that BiPAP is a little different. I just want to debunk that. There is no difference in the acute setting of what's better or worse for the patient in general. If you're just trying to stabilize it and you only have CPAP on your truck, use it. If you've got BiPAP, use it. That kind of thing. So it's kind of one of those weird anomalies where the EMS world isn't as up to speed or up to date on what BiPAP does and is. So they think it's something that's absolutely different. Both of them have PEEP in it. They both end up having PEEP in it. And that's really what's helping these acute patients, adult or pediatric.
I mean, we do our best to diagnose in the field. So it's usually asthma, but we see croup in the croup season.
RSV.
We're not going to recognize sepsis right away. We might, but it's very rare, but they could be septic. So if you're giving any kind of breathing treatments, even with croup, with racemic epi, it's recommended you put the mask on them so they get all the medication. And it helps them tremendously because, again, debunking blow-by. I mean, try holding a mask in front of a small child. They're going to keep turning their head. Try to strap a mask on their head. So.
If there's any individuals watching right now that want to, go to their medical director or their department and try to update their protocols for this pediatric CPAP, what's the biggest misconception about pediatric CPAP on children that you want to talk about and debunk?
Everything we said earlier. It's not invasive. It's non-invasive. They will tolerate the mask, and PEEP's not going to hurt them. And the great news about protocols like that, and you may have heard us talk about our landing page, but we've basically made a landing page and a sample protocol. People don't have to recreate the wheel. We've fine-tuned our protocol over the last 7 or 8 years to the point where we've even had Dr. Antevi sign off on it. Says this is really good. So yeah, we provide to anybody.
We do have a QR code that has everything. If you scan that QR code, it has got everything: training videos, protocols, equipment. And the fortunate thing is pretty much only one manufacturer of this mask right now. So if you don't know who your rep is for Boundtree, et cetera, you call a number and they will tell you exactly who your rep is. To follow up, though, one of the things that was interesting, it happened here locally, is one of the guys actually saw one of our lectures and went to his department, and their medical director says, "We don't see that many pediatric cases. We don't need this." You tell me what department doesn't have pediatric cases? We all do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the equipment is not that expensive. You already have most of it on your truck for the adults. Any driver you have, including vents, will fit on these 3 masks. There's only 3 mask sizes.
Is there an ideal age range for this in kids?
If the mask fits.
If the mask fits.
If it used to be 1 year and older, but that changed now. So it's just if the mask fits.
Now, one thing I want to make sure.
A whole nother area if they're too small for the.
Right. Yeah.
mask.
And that's the, like, one person asked, well, what if I deliver a newborn? I'm like, hold on a minute. That's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
We are not nasal pillowing these newbies, these brand new NICU kids. Now, if it's a day old, that's different, but when that baby would first come out and it's being exposed to the world and it's not breathing, you need to follow your neonatal resuscitative guidelines that you have in your department, stimulation, suction, BVM, like use what you do for that, get that patient stable through the means that do not try to, because we don't know how spontaneously breathing a brand new child is. It's different in the hospital setting when it comes to putting a brand new baby on BiPAP. They're still even doing some resuscitation to get that child to a point where they're spontaneously breathing. So a newborn, do not think that you would put this kid on non-invasive ventilation of CPAP or bi-level. But, if they're a day old and they're having respiratory distress, that's a whole nother story. That mask we've tried these masks on very, very small, dummies. I think, what's the youngest you put somebody on, Rob?
I put my daughter on it just to see if it fit, and she was 8 months old.
So
for the small mask fitter.
I think one of the cases that Dr. Kata shared with us is, I think that was 4 months, but we're like, once again, it's the one of the contraindications if the mask doesn't fit, and the mask, and they'll see when they go to the landing page, when they get deep into the information, there's a fitting chart for 2 of the smallest masks. And then if those 2 small masks are too small, then they just go to the adult small total face and let it right up the forehead on a child. I mean, that adult small mask, which is the largest for the pediatric range that they'll see, that fits me. So you're looking at toddlers, walking age, you're going to be using the biggest mask anyhow in that pediatric set.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there's a part of admin staff from a department listening, watching right now, what would you tell them would be the first step to implementing this in their department?
Be open-minded and realize that we've been doing it very successful here in Central Ohio, and it's growing, in throughout Ohio and the country now. And we've even got high-level medical directors that have been instrumental in adult CPAP calling us up, wanting to know what our solution was. So it's just a matter of, that QR code that you saw on the screen, the link that's in the description with everything we put together. We went through that with a fine-tooth comb. If you study that page, there's videos, there's podcasts, there's all kinds of stuff on that. If you spend some time on that page, you will learn everything we know about pediatric CPAP.
I think the biggest thing too is what we're learning going out and talking to all these medical directors, and being fortunate to go across the country here in the last year, is each state, as we know, is different. So it's got to be in their scope of practice first in the state. So that's the big thing the admin needs to look at and be proactive to get that changed. It's simple. Kyle walked up to our state medical director at a conference, and he got the age thrown out just with a conversation with her, and she updated it following week.
Yeah, a week or 2 later, yeah.
So
that's simple.
And we've got a really good, like, our Ohio scope of practice now has some really good language in there. So that's public. You can go, I look it up all the time. If someone is in another state and they want to see what our scope of practice is for the state of Ohio, it also covers ventilators, of course, but it also, it basically, the wordage they use is multifunction ventilatory support devices. So that really covers a blanket of everything, so.
And the important thing too is in the state of Ohio, basic EMTs can do it.
Yeah.
That's what's awesome. It's that simple. And then basics are awesome. We know they say paramedics, so let's just start there. But yeah, it's just really cool to see that anybody's allowed to use this. And our goal, hopefully, too, is have some of these standalone ERs and / urgent cares all over Ohio to have them. Because as you'll see, if you look at everything, it's 10 liters a minute. You plug it into your O2 tree. You don't need anything special. It's what we already carry for adult disposable CPAP.
Once they do implement it, what would you recommend as far as training to prepare them? Like everything on that QR code, is that enough, or how extensive do you think it needs to be?
I mean, people, if they have a really good education department and background in training pediatric respiratory distress or adult respiratory distress, they could pull the information out of the information that we have in that QR code for sure. Ultimately, when it comes to changing and really like solidly changing someone's brain about they have a tool now that and the biggest tool to fix is this one up here. It's not the devices that are on the truck or the masks. The big tool that when I do my training for people, I spend the first 40 minutes changing this tool, and then the last 5 minutes I show them the equipment. Like, hey, this is how easy it is. So the biggest thing is realizing. And I had one person come up to me a week or two ago after I did some training, and he was a younger medic. And I don't want this to go the wrong way, but I'm going to tell you how he said it exactly. He goes, "I can't wait for my next respiratory distress kit." And I'm like, "Oh, dude." And he's like, "No." He was like, "You've given me the confidence that I can do something now about it." And that's the key. That's when I knew that it flipped a light switch in that kid's head. And everybody in the room heard that because they were all like, "Dude!" And then they were like, "Well," then they all went like, "Well, yeah." And I mean, with this training, they giving the paramedics and the EMTs the confidence that they can do something about a pediatric worker breathing is really where the focus is. Like even on the protocols that they'll see when they look at our protocols, and they can adopt it, copy and paste. We don't care, because this is for the greater good of the country and the pediatric population. Worker breathing's right up top. You assess worker breathing on your triangle as you walk in. If that kid's chugging away, you'll pull up that chest and you see belly breathing, instantly start thinking CPAP. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but start thinking it. Get it in your head.
But, and if you do it and they really didn't need it, it's not going to hurt them. That's the beauty of it. You cannot hurt these kids. And any ER doc will tell you in the pediatric world is, other than the contraindications, you cannot harm them.
Yep. Do y'all know any other agency or group in the country that's kind of trying to lead the way as well with pediatric CPAP in the country?
I don't think there's anybody that we know of.
I did when we were at NAMSP. I was doing an airway session, a breakout airway session, and a guy came up to me and says his eyes got huge when he saw the mask. He's like, "This would be awesome." He goes, "Right now we're just using a BVM." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're doing CPAP for kids, but we're only using a BVM and the sizes of the BVM and just holding it on the patient." So there are people in the country that are dabbling, but I don't think there's enough people in the country that have seen what we put together. I mean, there's more now because we've been talking about it for a year and whatnot. But it's one of those things where I think it's the frequency is really what slows people down. They don't think they see it enough to implement it, and we have to try to debunk that as well because of the asthma conversation.
If you're giving them a breathing treatment, they should be on it. That's what everybody's saying, and that's what we've witnessed. Like, if you're giving them a treatment, if they need a treatment, you should put them on CPAP, because we can dive into that later if you want. But
opens up the airways more, stents it open. Yeah.
Again, debunking blow by.
Right.
But, we have some exciting stuff coming with all the hard work. And, there's probably going to be potentially some pretty big departments and medical directors that are going to be huge advocates of this. And it's awesome. So our work is paying off.
That's great. And you said you all started this in 2016, correct?
The conversation started back then? 2019 is when,
okay. I believe 2016, 2017 was the training. And then I went to Dr. Orth and asked him about it. And we put our team together to start working on it.
With seeing the progress from then to now, where do you hope it is 5 years from now?
Standard of care.
Across the country, standard of care, across the world, actually.
Yeah.
We're hoping. We have a lot of hopes, but we hope it's in the house curriculum. We hope it's standard of care.
Well, and one of them,
look how adult took off.
Yeah. And one of the big things too that, like one of the things that Dr. Antevi talked to us about early on in the process is he was like, when we told him about the near drowning or submersion injury patient that we got, that the department that used it here locally used on a patient to help them recover, of course, spontaneously breathing post, near drowning, or, whatever we're supposed to call it now, submersion injury. That was important, but low SATs, clear, obvious tachypnea and distress. They, a brand new medic who had learned about this in her class here locally in a local paramedic class, said, "Hey, let's do the CPAP," and it turned the kid around really quick. Kid still went to ICU, but the stay was most likely, it's got to be, my daughter was only in the ICU for I think 2 days, and and she was on CPAP for 18 hours and ICU for 2 days and then step down. But nonetheless, we do have some studies that we're working on with Nationwide Children's that's going to be showing the back end of how long their ICU stay was, if they are sick enough still to be in the ICU or still be on BiPAP. But we've also had cases where the kid was discharged from the ER after they were stabilized. So yeah, really cool stuff. Yep.
I'm going to shift real quick into mental health and how this can alleviate some of those issues. Let's just talk about, stress and anxiety coming from feeling powerless on pediatric calls. Have y'all ever had those experiences?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, that's just the easy answer on that one. We can dive super deep into this one. Rob has some stories about that. I have it from my own daughter. I beat myself up for months afterwards. Why didn't I? I'm a respiratory therapist. I'm a paramedic. I'm airway, I'm the airway guru, blah, blah, blah. Like, why didn't I see this? And it just slipped under the radar. And I beat myself up. Like, what did I do? What did I almost do? What did I almost do? To the point where I broke down in a chief's office one day. I was just like, he was like, "Hey, you're not yourself." And it was a mutual aid agency that I was visiting. And he pulled me into his office. He's like, you're not acting yourself, Kyle. And I said, man, I'm beating myself up about this stuff. And we had a long talk. It was great because we normalized the conversation. That's a big thing I talk about on my podcast about mental health in general, is normalizing the conversation. Don't shy away from sharing. And he helped me through that time. And luckily I didn't spin any further down into it. But Rob has some cases that he had that didn't have CPAP. And then he has the situation on Christmas Day where he did have CPAP, and he can really dive into the yin and yang of what this can do for us as clinical providers.
Yeah, we've all had those runs that have had good outcomes, and unfortunately have had bad outcomes. And it's just nice to be able to look forward. But I'll tell you about a specific run that really stands out for me, is talking about drownings. Several years ago at my other department, we had a child near drowned basically. We bagged her a little bit and she started waking up. And this was before we had all the good drugs to knock people down and take control of their airway. You'd bag her enough, she'd wake up enough, but she had flash pulmonary edema. It just didn't go well. Everything we tried, we got her to the hospital. She ended up arresting. Anesthesia, had to try 4 times to intubate her. So I wouldn't even want to imagine how that would have been if we had to do that in the field. But I just often wonder, because the local department here recently with the drowning, I just have to wonder, and it still bothers me today, if we had CPAP back in that day, would it have worked? And my thoughts are probably, because of how it works.
Yeah, the PEEP helps with pulmonary edema, just like it does on adults.
There's nothing we can do about it. We've got to move forward and just change the industry and the scope of practice of it. And then fast forward to a run we had on Christmas Day. And this does revolve around mental health. And like Kyle and I like to talk about, we don't just have one patient. We have the family that's the patient and us and our mental health of it. And we walked in on this child that was sitting on the stairs, and she was in obvious distress. And by rights, mom was freaking out and was just really scared and upset. And fortunately, with all this stuff that we've been doing with CPAP over the years, and my partner trained with us a lot, I had the utmost confidence it was going to work. And there was such a sense of calm in that room with all the providers. And I just simply looked up at Mom. I promise you this is going to work. I just need you to calm down a little bit and be here for your daughter. And Mom calmed down, and she saw that it worked right away. She witnessed the retractions disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just so cool that there is a tool now that when we walk into these oh shit moments, that it's going to work. And if it doesn't work, which it usually does, but if it doesn't work, then we've got to do some other stuff. But it's amazing how that helps your mind and your mindset, and feel like you really made a difference. And
even if you walk away from it, and even if you walk away from one where, because we know we've had adult CPAPs that fail, they have the fight or flight goes away, and they're like, oh, somebody's breathing for me, thank God. And then all of a sudden they stop breathing, and you have to go to the next level. If you have to go to the next level on even the pediatric patient, when you try pediatric CPAP or bi-level BiPAP, whichever one you're using, at least when you're done with the run, you said, hey, listen, I had tools, I had training, I had knowledge to do something about this run, instead of saying, my hands were tied. Like we talked, the medics that took my daughter in, their hands were tied. They did a little blow by, they'd started an IV, but it didn't slow down the path of her decline. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never talked to those guys afterwards and gals. But it's one of those things where I can only imagine now that they have that on their truck, they would have said, hey, listen, it would have been a lot better not to say to myself, man, I wish I could have done more. Nobody ever wants to say that after a run. No matter the outcome. They
were actually still in the department when we started it, and they still remember that run. They're like, we really wish we would have had that.
Me too.
Like, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, just let's move forward. We have it now. So that's what's awesome. It really changes the mental health aspect of it, and that's so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize, like, when we get new interventions that we can do, and then we get somebody that's super, super sick, and we perform a successful intervention, and they immediately change and get better. That is the best feeling in the world.
Huge.
As opposed to someone crashing on you and you can't do what you need to. And
you can't even try,
you can't even try, and that'll stick with you,
And the biggest thing is most of these kids are generally healthy. So they do a lot better than the adults that we've CPAP, that we've had to intubate and everything. So that's what's cool about it. I mean, if it's not
that's
working,
why the blood pressure, low blood pressure wasn't a big deal for Camden, because, and that had to be explained to me, because you got a healthy heart and healthy lungs, and the positive pressure in the chest for a child actually supports their blood pressure. In a nutshell, then like an adult with a weak and low, contracting heart, the positive pressure has a potential to decrease their pressure more. So I know with adults, our protocol says 90 or above for CPAP. With kids, we don't have a blood pressure level.
And for kids, it increases their cardiac output. But again, back to resuscitation. If their pressure is low and you're concerned, same with an adult, fix the pressure. Give them pressors or whatever your protocol says. Give them a fluid bolus, depending on what's going on with, obviously, if it's pulmonary edema, don't. But you don't see that in kids normally. But it increases cardiac output on kids, and it really benefits them in that area too.
To all the young providers watching right now, what advice would you all give them after their first really bad pediatric call?
Well, and this is part of what I do when I train. I literally have 2 or 3, slides that I talk, and it's not a mandate, but it's a request from me, and this will be the same request people listening now, is every single pediatric respiratory distress run you have in your department, you need to review it like you review a cardiac arrest. Get with your crew first. Talk about it after. I mean, I spoke with the crew that did did the most recent one in our department, and they had a private conversation after the run and said, "Hey guys, where could we have tighten this up a little bit?" 1, they chose to do it. 2, if you chose not to do it, why did you choose not to do it? Was the patient, intolerable? Did they just forget that they had it? So that post review of respiratory distress runs should keep it top of mind to help that crew in that department train when to use it and why to use it. If it didn't work, why didn't it work? But if it's one of those things where if it's any type of increased worker breathing and you choose not to do it, it's not supposed to be punitive, but it's like, okay, you saw increased worker breathing. We know we train, and these are departments that have implemented it. We know that increased worker breathing is the main reason to put them on CPAP. You saw it, you charted it. Why didn't you do it? Let's have a discussion. If it was something with they were still too nervous about how it would work, if they thought maybe the patient was going to refuse the mask, well, try it. What's once again, it's non-invasive. If they try the mask and they refuse it, then that kid's probably not as far down as you think. But I think it's one of those things where that post-run discussion, review, and then also once that crew does it, if there's anything that's of note, to take it to the rest of the department and share it.
Yeah.
But on the mental health side of it too, with that, what Kyle says is all correct too. But I think to answer your question, especially the newer guys, learn from us older guys, because mental health was not a thing for us. And if we talked about it, we were a sissy. You're not. Thank God our industry's changed that mindset. Is if you've had a really bad run, and I don't care how well it went, if they still died, you did everything you could, you need to lean on your partners. You guys need to sit and talk about it after the run, because they're probably feeling the same way you do. Going home the next day and going drinking and whatever else, that's not the answer. Talking to your partners and keeping an eye on each other. And if that doesn't work, then you need to seek help through your department, through EAP or whatever, because this stuff really piles on. And, I was there, Kyle was there, you were there. Oh, we don't need that. We got it. Well, from personal experience, this built up for over the years, and I was not doing well later in my career, and I had to seek professional help, and I'm not embarrassed to share that, because we have a high suicide rate in our industry, and it's got to stop. Period.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kyle, I've got to ask, how old's your daughter now?
She's 21. She's actually at Children's Hospital today working her summer internship on the 5th floor in the burn unit. So it's a full circle moment for us.
Yeah. What's she think about being sort of the catalyst for this kind of movement right here?
I showed her, I went down to, she goes to Ohio State University, and I went down to grab her to come home one day, and the article that we wrote that was in Firehouse last year in October, I had a copy of it, and I handed it to her, and she started flipping through it. She's like, "What am I looking for?" I'm like, "Just keep on flipping." And so the one picture that we took that day of her on the BiPAP is the picture that they'll see when they do this QR scan as well. So that picture that you see in the ebook is my daughter. But she saw it, and she started to tear up, and was like, she's like, "Dad, I'm proud of you guys." And she knows Rob, Rob and I and her have talked extensively about this. She wrote her nursing essay. She put a major part of why she wants to become a nurse into her essay that I never even knew about. She never shared this stuff with me or her mom. And she wrote her essay, and she talked about that day, and she remembered everything. Cody, she remembered everything, to the point where she even said, I had to have her retract it a little bit. I said, "You may not want to say that you felt like you're going to die in your nursing essay, but nonetheless, I didn't know you felt that way, babe. Like, okay, do we need to talk?" So she just remembers the kindness of the nurses that she had. She remembers the support from my wife and myself, in that moment. She remembers the visit from Rob, and she doesn't remember the conversation and what happened after that. But nonetheless, she thinks it's pretty cool. And, she's told me and Rob before that she's proud of us and that this matters. So it makes sense.
That's great.
Well, she was the inspiration. And the other cool thing too, is when we started in 19, we took it in front of city council and did a whole presentation. And of course, Kyle and his family was there, and Cam was there. And we had her put the mask on, and there's a picture of her and I together. And the first thing she said is, "I remember this smell."
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Like, she remembers everything. But seeing that picture,
and she was 6. Yeah, she was 6. No.
made us tear up, like just the before and after, like, and those pictures I think are on the QR code. It's really cool to see how she's grown up and how she's wanted to come in this industry. And that can be several children, because I think we really want to stress that the sooner you get these kids on CPAP, the better, and the outcomes will show that. I mean, most of our transport times, even here, are 30 minutes minimum. And once you get them on it, like we'd like to think, and I think the doctors even told Kyle, if she'd have been on this sooner, I mean, she probably would have presented better at the ER, but we didn't have it back then, obviously.
Guys, thank you so much for coming on. In closing, I just want to give you all the floor. If you have any social medias for people to follow, websites, anything else you want to get out there, discuss, please feel free.
Yeah, I'm just my name. If you Google my name and spell it the right way, you'll find all of my social medias. You'll find my podcasts. I have a podcast for mental health and a podcast for clinical stuff too. So, and then just the QR code really will show you everything that leads to our emails, that leads to everything. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have rebuttal, when you read through this, please reach out to us. We are open books when it comes to this conversation. Rob and I probably take 4 or 5 calls a week from people around the country about stuff, so yeah, feel free. We want people to reach out and ask us more.
I think the biggest thing is just the QR code. Like I said, he said it has everything you need to know, our contact information, the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
So anybody can call us certain times, obviously not in the middle of the night.
We're Eastern. Yeah, we're Eastern.
We love to talk about it and answer questions.
Yep.
But thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been eye-opening for me too. I'm going to go holler at my EMS director after this,
And Kentucky's not far away. I'll come on down.
Yeah.
Rob and I'll come down. We'll do the training.
We'll meet you at Kings Island.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, sounds good. Guys, I appreciate you. Thank everybody for watching. Hopefully I'll get episodes out more consistently now. Try to have them out every 2 weeks. As always, guys, y'all have a great day.